I never know when this is running. It starts like it's a still, and then it starts, and I look terrific. Didn't my hair look great today? Anyway, it's Passover. I normally wouldn't do this blog today, but I have a lot to say, so I'm going to do this quick blog. I was just watching the Ten Commandments, and of course I love the Ten Commandments. I watch it every year. How many times have I seen it? I used to watch it with my parents. I went to see it in a movie theater. My father bought me this Ten Commandments book. During Passover, I always watch it. Like I watch A Christmas Carol at Christmas. I still watch it, and I look for different things in there. It's still such a wonderful movie and all this stuff. But here's what I want to say. The purpose of Passover for well, I don't have to tell you what it is. We celebrate that the Jews were all slaves during Egypt, and finally they were let go. Moses came and with God's will, let the Jews go, and finally let them go, and he wouldn't let them go, and then he brought on the hail, and he brought on boils, and he brought on frogs, and brought on locusts, and all these things. If I was just, please let them go already. They've been slaves for who knows how long already. The point is, then he had the part of the Red Sea to let the Jews be free, and that's why we celebrate or honor the Jews, so we don't forget for what the Jews went through, and that's why we have bitter herbs, remember their tears, and the matzah that they didn't have time to bake bread, and that's why we remember these things, because what the Jews went through and our ancestors went through, so we don't forget. That's why every year we celebrate these holidays, the Hanukkah, and with the oil and the candle that lasted 8 days, all this stuff, so we don't forget. Now, I live in a very Jewish area, and I live in an area with all Orthodox Hasidic Jews, and why I'm here, I don't know why. When we first came back from Philadelphia, my in-laws were living here. They had a house, I sold the house, they moved to this area. So when I came to move to Toronto, because my in-laws kept telling me in every corner they're making movies, you got to be in Canada and Toronto. And I was going to New York. I went to LA with my business partner, my best friend, to making a show business. But they said, you got to come to Toronto. And they were right. They're making a lot of movies in Toronto. So we moved in the area near my in-laws because Andrea wanted to be next to her parents. Just so happens it's a very Orthodox Hasidic area. It looks like Fiddle on the Roof where I live. That's what it looks like. And thank God for those Jews, because if those Jews didn't uphold the religion, the holidays, the customs, and whatever goes on, who knows? The Jews that I surround myself with, which are conservative Jews, they're only Jewish by their last name. Goldberg, Greenberg, Goldstein, Greenblatt, that's it. After that, they're all out eating bacon and eggs right now. They're not... I honor the holidays. I grew up, my parents, and I was a conservative Jew, but I grew up, honoring the holidays. And I honor Yom Kippur, celebrate, honor, whatever the words are. I keep the holidays. So our house is a Passover house. We have matzah and stuff, no bread or anything like that. And my kids do it too. And I'm doing another Passover blog, but this is what I want to say about this quick blog and Passover, all this stuff. So I'm watching Ten Commandments, and the Jews were slaves for many, 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 many years. Until finally Moses was born. I don't know how many years, 40, 100, hundreds of years, whatever it was. And then Moses was born in the movie, and then when he was born, he doesn't let the Jews go right away. He grows up, maybe another 20 years they're slaves, another 30 years. And then until finally he finds out that he's the deliverer to free the slaves. But meanwhile, all those years from the time he was born, they're still slaves during the movie. And then he grows up, and then he's an Egyptian. He thinks he's an Egyptian until he realizes he's a Jew. And then he goes to see God, and more years go by, and then finally the Jews are freed. So all those years the Jews are freed. Now, we had a Seder last night at Andrea's mother's house, and one of her friends were there, and her friend and all Andrea's friends and parents are from Hungary, so they were there during the war and the ghetto and all of the horrible things that went on during the war that you can't even imagine. And the guy I was talking to yesterday, an older guy in his 80s, who was there also during the war and the ghetto and all that stuff, and he was telling me the atrocities and the horrible things that were going on during the Holocaust that we all know and read about and see movies and all that stuff. And he said they would kill babies and throw babies against the wall, whatever the Germans would do at the time that this happened. And then he said to me, there is no God. In his mind, his opinion, there's no God, because what God would allow this to happen? Now, many people say this to me. Many people... his age, some people say that there's no God, what God would allow this to happen, to have all these Jews killed and murdered and babies, and what God would allow this to happen to families and all other stuff. Now, that's his opinion, and I'm not going to debate him that there is a God, even though I believe in God, and I see the signs from my family and whatever goes on in my world, but I'm not going to debate him and try to convince him there is a God, because he's a walking history book. He went through that, and God forbid nobody should go through what he went through and all those people went through. And for him to say that, he's saying that because of what he went through, because he doesn't understand it. And many people that I do business with, family, friends, also many times they say there's no God, they don't believe in God. Howard Stern says he doesn't believe in God, whatever it is. And I think that for him to say that there's no God, he's alive. He made it through the war. He got married, he has kids, his grandson lives with him. And he's okay. He's living in an apartment. He goes to play cards. He eats. So where he says, in his opinion, there's no God. Meanwhile, he's alive, and he made it through the war, and he's had a great life after the war, married, he's an engineer, has money, whatever it is. So it's funny how he doesn't look at it, thank God I made it through, and thank God he grew up, and he has a family, has a grandson, he has a great life, a normal life in a democratic society. We don't live in a dictatorship. The war was over. We won the war. The Americans helped, and we won the war. We beat the Germans. We're not living under a dictatorship. So doesn't that say something? Doesn't that say something that there is a God, that you made it through for whatever reason that other people didn't make it through, but many did make it through. And many Jews I read about it in the concentration camps and stuff would say they still believed in God. No matter what was going on, they still never stopped believing, because it's human beings that were doing this. And however long it took for it to end and to stop and to move forward, but we won the war. We won. And how do you think that happens? How do you think we won the war and many of the Jews got out, and many of the Jews who I do business with now, who are immigrants that came that had nothing, have built empires. They've built financial empires in land and real estate. People that had nothing, where people that are born with silver spoons in their mouth do nothing. People that go to college and university still do nothing. And people that came from adversity and horrible, horrible times of depression and war, they've built empires. So when I hear Howard Stern say that he doesn't believe in God, there's no God, I think, how does he get all that success? Of course, he thinks he got the success because he worked hard. Well, what do you think pointed him in that right direction to meet certain people, to get him where he is, to be making hundreds of millions? How do you think you got there like that? So those are my beliefs, that wherever we are in life, we're all given free will. We're all given the same playing ground to play on. If you're born in a democratic society, you're given the same ground as everybody else. And now it's whatever you want to do with it. And God says, here's 125 years. Now, go do what you want to do. And then we make our own choices and decisions, whatever you want to do. But some people are successful because they've been led down the right path and they've seen opportunities that are presented to them, and they've taken advantage of those opportunities. But for some reason, people think it's all them, that it has nothing to do with God or a higher being, whatever, which is what I believe in growing up and going to Hebrew school and all that stuff, that I believe there's God, and I see the signs, and I go to synagogue, and I pray, and I do all the things that I was brought up and taught, and I believe in all that stuff. So when people like the guy I was with last night who says, there is no God, I'm not going to debate. Everyone has their own opinions the way it is. But I'm thinking it's funny how me being an optimist who always sees good things and sees optimistic things, other people look at the things that don't go their way. So where I'm thinking, he's saying there's no God, I'm sitting there having a Seder with him. And I'm thinking, if he believes there's no God, why is he at the Seder that we invited him to? Why is he wearing a yarmulke? And why were you going through the prayers and he was saying some other prayers if he doesn't believe there's a God? It's crazy. So I didn't understand, but I didn't debate him. He's an old guy in his 80s. We all have our opinions, and that's his opinion. So I just want to let you know, as I watch the Ten Commandments, and I was telling my kids, where people watch so many movies and they think God snaps their fingers and things happen like it's magic. But you see the way God led the Jews out of Egypt? They were slaves for years and years and years. But then Moses, on the logical way, things had to happen. Moses had to be born. Moses had to grow up. Moses had to go see the king. And then through logical things of the world, the hail, the boils, the blood, the famine, the cattle, and whatever it was, to get the Pharaoh to let the Jews go. It happened in a logical way. It's not that God made the magic wand, because we see too many movies. But things happen in a logical way, and we're not slaves anymore. Doesn't that say something? And the war, there's no war anymore. We won the war. The Germans didn't win. Doesn't that mean anything? Yeah, it happened because people are nuts. But the fact that it happened, but we got out of it, and we won, and we're all free, and many of the Holocaust victims got out and created big lives, and they still believe in God and still celebrate the holidays and all that stuff. And that's how I believe that for whatever reason, crazy things happen, who knows why? I don't try to guess. I look at the good, the positive. There was an accident a few weeks ago here in Toronto. Some big truck fell on a car of a lady driving a car on the highway, crushed the whole car, and the lady walked out of the car. And people saying it's a miracle, because when this big truck fell in the car and crushed the car, just so happens the way it happened, the car fell into a ditch or a muddy ditch or something like that, and therefore when the truck fell on top of the car and crushed the car, the way it fell, there was room there where the lady was not crushed. And they had to bring these big cranes to pick up the truck, and the lady got out of the car. And they said, this is crazy. This is a miracle. It's insane. When people can't, scientists, they can't come up with any explanation They say it's a miracle. What do you think that is? How do you think that happens? It's crazy. That's not divine intervention. That's not a miracle, because scientists think with numbers and everything has to be logical. And I see situations, and I see things, and I see the good of the way my mother always found good in people, but I see the positive side of things, and I don't look for it. That's the way I think. So when he's saying yesterday, and I was watching Ten Commandments, how long it took, but the Jews are free because we're out here celebrating, and it says in the how good that we talk about if God didn't intervene and help release the Jews, we'd still all be slaves today. So it took a while, but it happened, and the war is over, and it happened. So when he said yesterday he doesn't believe there's a God, and I'm thinking, but he's here with us, and his grandson lives with him, and he grew up and has a family. Doesn't that say anything? So that's my Passover Seder. That's my Passover Seder, that I believe in God. I always believed in God. I believe things happen for reasons. Things are meant to be. Whatever happens, good or bad, opportunities are presented to us for us to take advantage of these opportunities, and they're presented to us through God, our family members, whatever it is. And I've always, like the cowardly lion in the Wizard of Oz, I do believe. So when he said this to me, I wanted to talk about this, about him saying that he doesn't believe in God, and he's sitting at a Passover Seder. Thank God he's alive and well at a Passover, but he doesn't believe in God. And then I was watching the Ten Commandments and saw how long it had, but God came and got the Jews free. So, and the last thing is, when I took my kid to the Bahamas, and they have something wonderful fish and under the sea. And I said, look at all these life forms. It's crazy. I said, we walk on the street, we go to restaurants. There's a whole other world under the water. And my kids always tell me about under the deep water, the Marianas Trench, not the band, but under the Marianas Trench, and that fish with that light on top of his head, and so many other crazy fish that scientists have no idea about, these other crazy fish. And when I see bugs outside, and there's so many different kind of bugs and animals and insects, I said, you don't think there's a higher being? Where do you think these life forms come from? These crazy, and every life form has their own way of survival. They all have their own way of getting food and protecting themselves. Their instincts. Where do you think this comes from? So that's my sermon, my Passover sermon, when the gentleman said yesterday he doesn't believe in God. And I said, I thought, but he's here. How could he not believe in it? Of course. And I believe in God, and now that's my Passover Seder, and that's my blog for today. So happy Passover to all my Jewish friends, and we should have a happy and healthy Pesach, and a good year, and a lot of great success. And now go to DaveTVEmpire.com. Goodbye!